Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me today on the Divine Messages podcast. My name is Karina, and I am a psychic medium out of Calgary, Alberta. Today on the podcast, I have another special guest joining me. The other day, I was just puttering around in my house and cleaning up a little bit, and it just happened to be New Year's Eve. And yes, I was cleaning on New Year's Eve. But as some of you know, cleaning makes me extremely happy. Anyways, out of nowhere, Lisa popped into my head, and I reached out and I wished her a happy new year. But seconds after I sent the text, I got the strong message to ask if she would be willing to come on the podcast with me. And now I will let her tell you what happened next. So, everyone, please help me welcome Lisa to the podcast. Lisa, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. I'm really good, actually. It's a new year, and I think there's going to be a lot of change, as there has been for the last couple of years. This is another year of change. And I will say that the other night, I was just messaging you to say, hey, Happy New Year. How are you? And seconds later, I got that message and I went, oh, okay. I guess I'm going to ask her. The worst she could say is no. And then I'll let you explain what happened when I messaged you that.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I really want to tell you what an honor it is that you even asked me to be on the podcast. I mean, I've been listening to the podcast since the beginning, and yeah, like I'm a fan. Let's just say. So,
So
yeah, I
sweet.
wanted to say that first. So, yeah, it was the last day of 2022, and I had this feeling of just going outside, try to get the little bit of vitamin D that we do get here in Calgary.
Yeah, a little
And I
bit.
was just and I was just standing out and I was just standing out in the sun and closed my eyes and I looked like for some guidance. I don't know. I was speaking to my spirit guides. It says, please guide me in the direction of where I need to be the best version of myself. I need some guidance. And I let it go. That was the question I asked. Stood there for a bit, trying to even wait for a sign at that moment. You want it right away. And of course, it doesn't work that way. But I was at work. I worked at the airport and I was on break. And I received a text from you saying Happy New Year. And I was just hearing from you. It's like so exciting. And I was like, oh, Karina texted me. And then to be asked, like, would you like to be on my podcast? I was shocked. I mean, like I said, I feel so honored to be on here. That's when I realized like these things don't just happen. Like I'm meant to be on this podcast, especially
Yes.
when you said, this is coming from spirit. That's
Mhm.
when it popped in my head. I'm like, wait a second, I asked my spirit guides today what I should be doing, So the fact that you asked me, I knew it was meant to be. Of course, the first thing that pops in my head is like, who am I? Like, what do I have to say? What do people have to hear from me?
Right.
And I remember you saying, just block those thoughts out of your head. That's your ego. Don't let it get to you. And yeah, so I'm really excited to be here.
That's amazing. I remember saying to you, this is meant to happen. I don't understand it either, right now, because it was New Year's Eve and it was late. But I said, however it's supposed to go is going to happen the way it
Right.
should. And
Mm-hmm.
spirit will guide everything. And they made me ask you. So, well, I always listen to my guides, not always, I shouldn't say always, but I try to listen to my guides as best as I can. And I really had that strong message. And, what's funny is that I really don't message a lot of people on special occasions like that. Not because I'm not thinking of them. I get caught up in my downtime because I deal with so many people per day that I love everybody. I might make a little post to wish people, but I don't individually message people or a lot of people. And
Mm-hmm.
something just was so strong. I'm like, oh my God, I saw your face in front of me. And I'm like, I have to message you.
Oh,
And
that's so nice.
it's funny because you usually message me on, many occasions. Like I think it was Easter and Christmas and
Mhm.
all of those occasions. And yeah, something made me message you this time.
So as I said, it's New Year's Eve. I'm at work and I was kind of feeling blah. Like, my parents are in Italy. It's just my husband and I here. We've had some falling outs with some family, so it's pretty hard during the holidays being alone, during Christmas and New Year's. And I felt bad that my husband's alone at home because he has no family here. So I was just kind of feeling down and I think maybe somebody up there was like, you know what, I need to lift Lisa up. And yeah, I honestly when I received your text saying, "Do you want to be on the podcast?" I don't even know how to describe. It was like a light switch went on. It was like, oh, something to look forward to. I was so excited. Of course, I was so nervous. What do I have to say? How is this gonna go? But I just pushed that aside and I chose to be in the moment. I just felt really happy that you asked me.
I love that. I think we sometimes forget that there is this amazing higher power that is in charge of everything. Because out of
Hmm.
nowhere, like I said, something made me say, "Hey, will you do this?" And we've talked
Hmm.
multiple times. So it's never come up before. And that night, just after you asked, those are the things you just can't deny, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So let's take
Yeah.
everybody back in time a little bit to how we even met because I can't even remember how long it's been. Like, I think at least 4 years, maybe. Is it like that?
Yeah, I would say actually, my high school friend, we have a mutual friend, T. She posted on social media that she was starting a podcast, and of course I was intrigued, and so I was starting to listen to it. When I heard the podcast was about spirituality and that she was friends with a medium, I mean I was hooked. I absolutely love all this stuff, and yeah, that's how I met you, and so of course I go onto your blog, onto your website, and I had to have a reading for you. Actually, last night I was listening to our first recording of my first reading. I think it was September 4th, 2020. And
Okay.
yeah, and it's funny, if I could give any advice to anyone who sees a medium, please record the session because there's things that you don't remember or there's things that don't apply to you at that moment in life. And then you look back on it years ahead and you're like, oh my God, that actually happened. Or now I know what they're talking about. Or you could even bring
Wow.
that information to other family members. Yeah. So I was listening to it. I was like, oh wow, I forgot that we talked about that. That happened. Like it was incredible. So that happened last night while I was listening to the reading.
So cool. That's great advice, by the way. Love that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So cool. So in that session, I'm trying to even because I delete everybody's session and I always talk about that. But
Hmm.
I think when you had come to see me, that was a time when you were kind of going through some turmoil and with other people, not your spouse. And it was
Hmm.
just other people around you. And I think grieving the loss of a loved one as well. And
Yeah.
that was something that you
Yeah.
needed validation
Hmm.
for, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if I may, I could start from the beginning.
Absolutely.
In fact, what led me into seeing mediums was the story that happened to my mom. She was just at a woman's show, and out of a whole bunch of group of people, this woman said, "I need to talk to you." And she looked directly at my mom, and she's like, "I need to talk to you privately." And of course, she's wondering what's going on, like what's happening. And this medium just, said to her, "Do you have three children?" And she's like, "No, I only have two." She's like, "No, did you give birth to three?" And she's like, "Oh my God, yeah. But one passed at birth." And
Wow.
that's like that at that moment, it changed our lives. Like I'm telling you, like these kind of
Holy.
validation, yeah,
Mhm.
it just opens your heart, it opens your mind, it makes you feel comforted that there's more out there than what we see. So of course she had a private session with the medium and she was telling her that Michael, who passed at birth, he is your guardian angel, he's with you all the time. And then it just goes off on so many other validations. So of course I was in high school at this time, so this is like over 20 years ago, and of course I wanted to see her, and she says, "No, your daughter's too young, she has to live her life a bit before she can come see me. Like let her get through some things before I talk to her." So come around 2005, I went to go see her, and just incredible things like that. Like I said, she told me things that I had no idea what she was talking about. Later on, I can be specific. In 2012, I listened to this cassette, and it was exactly things that she had said that did happen. And
Mhm.
it's just remarkable. So with that being said, that's how my spirituality opened, my awakening, and then in 2016, I lost my brother at the age of 41. No, sorry. I lost my grandmother in 2016. I lost my brother in 2017, and then I lost my grandfather in 2018. We were all very close, and it was a devastation to the family.
Mhm.
And with the passing of family, it really opens your mind, and you start asking questions, and synchronicities happen. Like you come across a podcast, come across a show or a book, and it just, you have so many questions. And then these answers start appearing in places you never thought you would find. Like I never thought I'd be reading so many books about spirituality. And then meeting you and having 3 sessions with you is just like, I crave more validation. Like I love it. Even when I hear a podcast, I want to feel hopeful. Like I want to hear someone's story and they say something that I'm like,
Yes.
oh, that's so wonderful. I love hearing that because it gives me hope, that my loved ones are there around me still.
I love it. I think it's important that we get that validation and that comforting feeling that we're not alone in this journey. So,
Yeah, absolutely. It's so comforting. Yeah. So when I looked back on the reading of September 4th, 2020, it just it's such a warm feeling to think about, like, you know, all the things that you were saying were true, and you were describing my grandparents to a T. You were describing my brother, and it feels like they're there. It's just a great feeling. So a few things that happened, I should start from the beginning. Just before the reading, when I parked in front of your house, this was in the summer or fall, I guess, and it was still warm out. I was walking towards your house. There was a swarm of dragonflies.
oh my
And
gosh, I didn't know that.
yeah, like, yeah, it's so incredible. And just in front of your house, you live in a cul-de-sac, and it's just weird. There's like no, like, I don't understand. I honestly don't know how this is even possible. They were just swarming in front of your house. And I walked right into them. I mean, they were enormous, and one hit me in the head, and they were flying everywhere. They were swarming everywhere. And honestly, in my heart, I felt like my spirits guides or my loved ones were there. I felt like this was a sign. And I consider dragonflies to be a spiritual insect, I guess. The Japanese people believe that when you see a dragonfly, that is your loved one visiting you. And I was actually told that by my brother. And so whenever I see a dragonfly, I feel like he's around. So even before coming for the reading, I said to all my loved ones that have passed, come in, it's a party, come join us. I want you all there. Well, they all showed up because even during the reading, you're like, Lisa, I feel like there's a lot of people here, and I feel like they're swarming me. Like I feel like I can't catch them. Like I feel like it's like all over me. I says, that's literally what happened just out of your house. I was swarmed by dragonflies everywhere. And it was funny because when I was walking towards your front door, they stopped. Like they didn't follow me. It was almost like your house was in a bubble and they couldn't get any closer. And they were all facing me though. I'm
Wow.
telling you, people might think I'm crazy, but this really
I
did
don't,
happen. It was so amazing.
I believe
Yeah,
you. I really
yeah.
do. It's amazing.
The only other time that's happened was when I went to visit my other brother who passed at birth, Michael. We were sitting on like his gravesite, and it was just, I can't even describe to you. There's no water around or anything because usually dragonflies are around water. That's like what I've been told. And they were
Mhm.
just swarming above us too in the cemetery, like at least 100 dragonflies. And this is where all the babies are buried. And I
Mhm.
just sat there
Oh,
in awe, just staring, like, how can you not believe like there's more out there? It's just amazing.
I
So
love
yeah, that
it.
was another thing. But yeah, I have so many stories. Like we could be here forever, honestly.
I know. I love
Yeah.
it.
What else can I say? When you were doing the reading for me, you were describing my brother Tino, and you were saying like he has really blue eyes, like they're so enchanting, and like you were describing him perfectly. And also mentioned he was pretty young. I says, yeah, he was 41. So the fact that like you can get all this information, I just think is astounding. Like I really don't know if you know yourself how special it is and how I look up to you. It's just so
Oh,
out of this world. It's so incredible. And I just love, I feel like I want to learn more, and I'm excited to hear more stories. And I hope I can bring excitement to other people who are noticing synchronicities and feel like, this just doesn't happen. Like there's just no way that there's no answer to this. And just realize that maybe you should just let it go and accept that there's really no such thing as coincidence.
there really
That
isn't.
yeah,
And I allow
yeah,
things to just happen and I think sometimes, not that I take what I do for granted by any means. I don't mean that. I just mean that sometimes I do this work so much. Like I'm doing this so many days per week, so many people per day that I'm just almost in robotic mode. It's like
Hmm.
go, 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 that I sometimes don't stop to realize how incredible this really can be. And not that I
Yeah.
don't want to, it's just sometimes I just shut it all off and I'm like, okay, now I've got to be mom and I've got to be a wife and I've got to get cooking done and cleaning and groceries and life, right?
Hmm.
So there are times where I'll sit back and just even take 5 minutes to just breathe in and think, what just happened? Like, how is this possible? I don't know if I will ever get used to this other side and the other world and how I can connect. I don't know. How can I wrap my head around it? It's mind blowing to me. And even when I say this to my husband, oh my God, because sometimes he'll ask me, how was your session? And I can't tell him anything because obviously it's confidential, but I'll say, oh my God, Nick, you have no idea. This thing, it was just crazy. And he'll look at me and he'll be like, you're still that amazed by this? You've been doing this for so many years, Karina. I'm like, how can I not be? I can't wrap my head around this.
Absolutely.
How did I know this? How could I see this? It
Yeah,
really
it's
is hard
amazing.
to understand. I guess, again, there are moments where I do stop and really feel it and just try to wrap my head around it, I suppose. But most days I'm just going and trying to just get through the day because I've got such a busy schedule that I do need to stop more and just sit with it and be amazed by it some more, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I look up
Unbelievable.
to you. Honestly, I think it's amazing that you opened up to your gift and that you accepted it in your life because I'm sure I want to say thousands, but I'm sure there's even millions of people on this earth who have this capability that they're too afraid to open up because they've been told you're crazy or they've been told otherwise. They always let their ego get ahead of them. Like, who am I? Like, why was I chosen this gift? Or,
Right?
they don't open it up. Yeah, and I just think it's amazing, like that you found the courage to let yourself be open to this because I imagine it's kind of a scary place. I was thinking like, you know, of course I would love to be a medium where I can, talk to my past loved ones. But then
Hmm.
on the other hand, I was thinking maybe how scary would it be if all these strangers start knocking on my door and being like, you know what I mean?
Hello,
Like,
I know you see us. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And then I thought maybe that could be a disturbance to my life. And I just want to thank you for, allowing yourself to open it up. And you chose this as your career, like to help and heal other people. It's truly a blessing. And I just really want you to know that
Oh,
there's people like me that, appreciate it.
well,
Yeah.
thank you. I mean, even my last episode that I put out on, I think it was the 23rd of December, I really, I think I called it check on your friends and loved ones. But
Hmm. Hmm.
for me to put that episode out, it was really difficult to hit upload because I was so open in that episode that I was afraid that it was too open almost. And I
Hmm.
thought, okay, I hit upload. And then after I panicked a little, like, oh my God, what did I just put out there into the universe for so many people who are listening all over the world to hear about my life? And
Hmm.
do you know that I got the most incredible feedback from that episode? And there was one lady who messaged me and she had listened to that episode and I had worked with her not long before that and she had said that I had truly helped her through this depression and what she was also experiencing and I sat there and I cried, Lisa. I was like, and this is why I do what I do
Yeah.
because of that. I will say that all the time. This is such a difficult job.
Oh, I can imagine.
I'm listening to people's deepest, darkest secrets and
Hmm.
their heavy, heavy pain that they've got hidden from everyone, but also
Yeah.
themselves. And
Hmm.
so it can be really trying on me and really difficult on me, but I do it because I know that this is what I was put on this earth to do. And as many times as I cry about it or I get overwhelmed and I get sad for people, I still
Hmm.
have to continue on this journey because this is what I've been asked and called to do. So
Yeah,
I try.
absolutely. Yeah. Well,
But
thank you for keep going. Keep going. Don't ever stop.
well, I'm gonna try not to. I'm sure I'm gonna be some little old lady, hopefully, still continuing this work and I do love it and I wouldn't change it for the world. And I think people like you and your husband, who we're going to chat about here in a second, who is also so open and spiritual and has felt different for most of, his life as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
For people that are like us that are very sensitive and don't know what to do with this stuff. That's why I started the podcast. That's why I work with so many people to at least let them know that it's okay, right?
Yes.
And that
Yes.
we're not alone. There's so many
Mm-hmm.
people like us, just like you said, thousands, millions, out there that are able to do this, but most people are too afraid to open up and
Yeah.
and also be ridiculed for it, right? And I have been, to be honest. Actually, that's the other episode I was writing about. Before we decided to record this, I was sitting there that day, earlier that
Mm-hmm.
afternoon, and I was writing about judgment and how I have been ridiculed for doing this kind of work, and yet I still do it
Yeah.
because
And good for you.
I
Like,
have to be me. If people don't
yeah.
like it, I'm not asking you to. And that's what
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about in that episode. I don't
Right. Right.
ask people to follow me or to believe what I believe because I don't push it down anyone's throat. If you
Yeah.
believe in the higher powers and you believe that there is something that exists out there and you want to know my perspective on it, it's my perspective. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But I think people get so judgmental, and I think that's why a lot of people stay hidden.
And I think it's human nature just to feel accepted. And it's in a comfort zone where you don't want people to think of you differently. So you're like, well, I'm not going to step out of my comfort zone. I'm in my little bubble. I don't want to, you know, like, of course, everyone wants to feel like they just don't want confrontation or whatever. But when it comes down to it, the truth will come out. I truly believe that. And for me to think about spiritual awakening, I was raised Roman Catholic. I mean, you're told to believe in these things. You're told, you're in school, you go to church, and you're being told, you're being told, you're being told. But really, where do you find it in your heart that this is real? You know.
Right.
So to find validation in someone to tell you things that there's absolutely no way they would know, that is just it was such happy moment for me. It felt like a light switch went on. It was like, thank God that I'm not just being told that there's something out there. I can
It
feel it
does
in me.
exist.
It
Yeah.
does exist. Like, it's just a remarkable feeling. If I could give everyone that gift to experience a medium telling them, like, in description, things that there's no way anyone else would know,
Hmm.
there's just there's no other feeling than like hope and the feeling of I honestly don't even have the words to describe how good it feels like. And I feel that there's so many people that have closed minds, like they're so close minded that they don't even want to give them the chance, and maybe they're even afraid that if it is true, I don't even want to know. Like, there's always fear that gets in the way. But if
Yes.
they just open up their mind, open their heart, and say, you know what have I got to lose? Like, go to a group reading and just experience that. It just makes you
Life
feel better.
changing.
Like, life changing. Like, why not would you
Yeah.
want to feel better,
And feel that there is
And
something that's amazing that exists out there, that they're protecting us and
absolutely.
watching over us. And
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
I think
Like,
what a shame
it's
that
so
most
good.
people don't, what a shame that most people don't get to experience that. And that's why, again, I don't push what I do, but I think the people that are starting to come around and be more open to it these days, it's for a reason. And I think good on them because look at what they're getting. It's magical. And
Yes,
even you trusting me enough to come back a couple of times for sessions, but you
yes.
also brought
Mm-hmm.
your husband, which I had never met him before until like a couple months ago here. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so he just his birthday is November 15th, and I thought, what a great birthday gift to have him, speak to his past loved ones. So I
yeah,
called you up and I asked if you were available, and thank goodness you were, because I know you're so busy. So, and I absolutely love seeing you work. So I asked if I could be in the session. And of course you said that was okay. So I sat and I just love watching you describe things. Like, for example, we're sitting there and your spirit team just guides you through the house that he lives in, or he lived in Brazil.
yeah,
Like it was so incredible.
To
We
a
look at each
T,
other
right?
to a T. Like you knew exactly where the sofa was. You knew exactly how the house looked. You knew where the table was. You walked through his home like you had been there before.
Yeah.
That is just another validation that this is just out of this world. Like there's nothing, there's no way to describe it. So seeing that is just, and like just sitting there and watching you work is just so rewarding. I just love it. Anyways, so of course, because I'm there, spirits can come through that knew me, Augusto and me. My husband's name is Augusto, I should mention. Yeah, he, and of course Augusto, well, I guess I could go from the beginning of like how we met and everything. That's another whole,
Yes,
like,
that is something
yeah,
I'm dying to tell everybody because it is synchronicities lining up and he's
yeah.
let me just throw this out there. When he came that day, I instantly felt so comfortable in his energy because he's just a good soul. He's like one of those
Hmm.
guys that just has a heart of gold and
Yeah.
he holds a very strong presence in a room, and he is definitely a natural born healer as well as you,
Hmm.
and you guys are opening up. So I did find it amazing that he came in, sat down, and he just allowed me to do the work without putting up a block. So that says a lot. And
Hmm.
now I would love for you to share how you two met, because even when you told me that story, I sat there going, you've got to be kidding me. Like that's just
Yeah.
fate,
Yeah.
destiny at its best. I mean, you can't make
Yeah.
this stuff up. So please
Absolutely.
share with
Yeah.
us.
Yeah. When people ask, so how did you meet your husband? I'm like, well, do you have a minute? Because
Yeah.
I wanted, yeah. And yeah, so it happened in 2001. He was with someone at the time. I was with someone at the time. We were not looking for anyone else. He was in Brazil. I'm in Canada. His background's Italian, and so is mine. So
Hmm.
at this time, you could have downloaded music on the internet. It was called Napster at the time. This is what people did. You just grab a song, you move on. You had the option to chat, but you really didn't have to. No one really did. So one Saturday, I'm just downloading some music, and all of a sudden, I get this message pop up saying, "Thank you for this song. Do you have any other type of this music?" And it was the message came in as in Italian because he was looking for old Italian folk music because he was part of the Italian folk group, and so was I. And so I says, yeah, I do have, it's really hard, obviously, to find old Italian folk music. And so he says, instead of me searching, how about do you mind if we exchange, after talking for a couple hours, of course, he's like, do you mind if we exchange, at the time it was ICQ Messenger, it's like MSN Messenger, like instant chat, and you
Hmm.
can send each other songs and stuff or photos, whatever. And I says, yeah, for sure, that'll be fine, so we could exchange music a lot easier. So we met through music. And 6 months pass, and we're still chatting. How's life in Brazil? How's life in Canada? And yeah, we just kind of became like pen pals online, I guess.
Hmm.
And it was just so funny because one day I says, how's it going? He says, oh, I'm not so good. My girlfriend and I broke up. I says, that's funny because this week my boyfriend and I broke up. Like it
Hmm.
happened the same week. It was kind of weird. So we were kind of just comforting each other, like, talking or whatever. And then it kind of grew from there. Like, I don't even know how to describe. Like, we started sending packages to each other for birthdays and Christmas. Like, we had a long distance relationship from beginning to end for 2.5 years. Like,
Wow.
yeah, a lot of my friends, of course, my family, they're all concerned. Like, how can you have, you know, a boyfriend or whatever online when
You
you
haven't
don't know
met.
really what he's
Mhm.
doing, you haven't met or whatever. I says, I can't describe to you how I feel. It's I feel like I've known this person before. Like, I don't know, I just had a good feeling. Of course everyone wants to protect you and make sure that you don't get hurt, and I understand that. I
Mhm.
respect that, but I also said, please respect me and trust me, I know what I'm doing. So of course we would have, like, he bought a webcam at this time, so this is still like 2002, and he was in law school. He didn't have much money, and he went out and bought a webcam so we could chat, virtually, and it just grew stronger from there. Like, so in December 2003, actually, in fact, December 12th, 2003, we have it engraved in our wedding ring, the day we actually physically met. Yeah, he came here to meet me for the first time, and he actually asked my parents. He said, he asked for permission. He's like, I'm not just going to show up. Like, I want to be respectful. Like, of course, I want to meet you. So he asked permission from my parents, and they welcomed him with open arms. We had a basement suite that he stayed in. So mind you, Brazil is summer is our winter. So while he was
Right.
on summer vacation, it would be December, January, February, he came here. So he came December 12th. He stayed for 2 months for his summer vacation. And my parents, my family, everybody loved him. Like he was in. He speaks Italian fluently. And so he was right in with my grandfather, my father. They fell in love with him. That was it.
Oh,
And yeah, we just grew, like we did all the touristy things, and it felt right. People often ask me, like, how did it feel when you were driving to the airport to meet someone that you really
mm.
actually never physically met? And they said, were you nervous? Were you like, how did you feel? I says, honestly, I felt like I was meeting someone that I knew many times before. Like I felt so relaxed. I felt so calm. It was just, I don't know how to, like, I wasn't nervous. Like, I knew this is where I was supposed to be.
Yep.
And yeah, they found comfort in knowing that kind of love exists. So, and it was so funny because I'm like, how is this going to work? Like, how, like we imagine how our first encounter is going to be. And how I dreamed of how it would be is actually how it turned out. Like, he said security. It was so funny because he was on kind of unaware. Like, this is his first trip out of Brazil on an airplane, never been anywhere before. This is He's by
Oh my
himself.
gosh.
He doesn't speak English really well, like, you know and so he I forgot to tell him that he would be picking up his suitcases once he's met me. Like, he thought he would pick up his baggage before meeting me. So he
Yeah.
was like kind of lost. When I saw him, there was a huge group of people, and he was exiting out of security, and he was like, look, he looked lost. He didn't see me. I was trying to wave him down. He couldn't find me. And he was kind of going back into security just to ask. I'm like, oh my God, why is he going back? He was just asking, like, where do I find my bags? Right. And so I was trying to, crawl through all the people to try to get to him. So his back was towards me. And I just tapped his shoulder. He turned around and we hugged. And like, I mean, when we hugged, I just felt chills run through my body, like an energy. And it was like, I've met you before. We know each other. Like, that's honestly how it felt.
I
So it
believe
was
it.
just, yeah, like how I dreamed of meeting him is actually how it happened. I'm like, I'm gonna come from behind and tap your shoulder, and you're gonna turn around and we
Like the
see each other for the
movies.
first time.
I love
Honestly,
it.
that's exactly what happened. Yeah, it was so good.
That is
And
amazing.
yeah, yeah. So we stayed for 2 months, and then of course he had to go back to Brazil to finish his degree, and it was just so heartbreaking. Like, I don't want you to leave, and of course, we knew that he had to. So my birthday is February 4th, so he left 2 days after my birthday, February 6th, and it was hard. Of course, it was devastating. But as
Hmm.
they say, the distance makes the heart grow fonder is 100% true. Like, we spent 10 months apart, and it just made everything even better. Like, we knew 100% that we wanted to be with each other for the rest of our lives. We're going to do whatever we can. I says, I'm
Oh,
going to, like, we have to be together. So that's when we started the process of him becoming a permanent resident of Canada. And I did everything I could. Like, I found all this energy. I'm like, I'm going to do whatever I can to find out how we can be together. And so that December, so now we'd be in December 2004, I went to Brazil to meet his family for the first time,
hmm.
and I stayed there for, actually, it was supposed to be for like, I think 3 or 4 months. I ended up staying like 6 months. I extended
Wow, I
my
love
stay
it.
because I loved it so much. Yeah, it was so good. And even the process of him becoming a permanent resident, people, like, that is very rare to have happened in such a short time. Like, he became a permanent resident in 4 months.
Wow,
And I know people have been doing it for like 4 years. You know what I mean?
that's
It
when you
was
know
pretty
it's
crazy.
effortless, and right there, my
Yes.
friend, is a soulmate at its
Yeah,
best.
absolutely.
I get asked that a lot from a lot of people, like, how do you know it's your soulmate? And I'll say to everybody,
Yeah.
so there's two things that I think to help people understand what a soulmate is one, if your knees go weak and all of a sudden your heart's racing and you're just like really lustful towards that person. Again, this is speaking from my opinion only, but I find that when it's so powerful like that, that it is more a sexual chemistry, a magnetism. But when you meet your soulmate, it is different. It's a calm that comes over you where you look
Yes.
them in the eye and you go, there you are. and you
Yes.
are so connected. And yes, all of those other things are there, but that's not the initial thought. The initial
Yes. Yeah.
thought is, even when I met Nick 25 years ago, I looked at him across the couch that I was at this party, and we were like, hi, like,
Yeah.
there you are. And he came and he sat beside me, and we instantly were just, I'm never usually comfortable around men. And I
Hmm.
instantly went into full safety. I felt like, who is this guy? I've never
Hmm.
felt that before. And I felt, yes, like you said, very like comforting to just not even stressed or worried about being in their
Yeah.
presence. It's like
Yeah.
almost like you need to be because they're part of you. And,
Yes. Yeah.
in my previous relationships, and I'm sure you can say the same, those relationships were magnetic. Sure, maybe they were, well, a lot of them were toxic, but
Hmm.
some of those were just more like where it's learning, and it's
Yes.
where you're discovering people and what you do really want out of life. And I think those people come into your life to help you appreciate your soulmate when you do meet them,
Hmm.
right?
Absolutely.
Hope that makes
Absolutely.
sense.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm glad that you guys got to feel that, because even when I, sat with the two of you together, I went, oh, this is it, just it is, like
Yeah.
you can feel it in the room that you are intertwined in an
Mhm.
energetic way, not just a relationship or husband and wife. I mean, I see a lot of spouses and I deal with a lot of couples, but not always do I see that relationship intertwined like that. Because
Yeah.
again, like, let's be frank here, 50% of people really get divorced after X amount of years together and stuff. It's just a fact of life, right?
Hmm.
But there's the others who are just really intertwined like that, where they are meant to just live this existence or on this earth with that
Hmm.
person.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Like I had another a medium say to me or say to us that she sees that we've lived many past lives together. In fact, one of the sessions I had with you
mhm.
was just about past lives, and you mentioned that same thing. You were unaware at the time that he was from Brazil, and you said, "I see that you two have lived together in I believe in South America, and I see this luscious green and tropical, and you're describing Brazil." And I'm like,
Oh,
wow. Yeah. And you're like, well, you've lived there before. And I think that's why I have such a connection to Brazil as well. I learned Portuguese without even doing any classes. Like it's kind of crazy. I don't even know where it
okay.
comes from. Yeah,
I do.
Brazilian
Past
Portuguese.
lives.
Yeah, yeah. Well, after the past life
Amazing.
regression we had, yeah, you described things that I'm like, oh, well, that makes sense. But yeah, we just celebrated our 15-year wedding anniversary. We actually celebrate two. So we got married in Canada July 7th, 2007. So 777, which is a
Oh, I
great
like
number.
that. Yes, it is.
Yeah. And then we got married in Brazil. We had the religious ceremony and everything December 29th, 2007. So we just celebrated our 15-year anniversary. And we really do take the time and appreciate our relationship. We do understand that many people do go through hardships and don't make it through. They, their
Give up
lives
or
might
yeah.
give up. Yeah, they might just go off in a different direction. But we only
Yeah, or
feel like
totally not evolved together anymore. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I just feel really blessed that we're still very strong, if not stronger. Like I feel like as the years go by, we just keep getting stronger in our relationship. We discover each other more throughout the years because of course we don't stay the same. We are constantly evolving, constantly growing, and we're only growing on the same direction. And I think we feel blessed that we still are. You know, many people tend to grow in separate directions. And yeah, I feel like we do appreciate, we understand that we do have a special relationship for sure.
And that is a
So
soulmate. That right there is a
yeah.
soulmate. And so I'm actually really glad that I got to meet him, because I
Hmm.
obviously have worked with you a few times and I have seen his photos and things like that. But to watch you two together was pretty neat and pretty special. He's a great guy.
Oh, thank you. There's so many things. Like I could sit here and talk about so many
Oh
things.
my God, spiritual stuff.
Yeah,
I know.
yeah. Like I
That's how
could,
my
like I
life
could,
is. I do.
it's,
There's so much about it that's amazing that how can we
yeah,
not?
yeah. And I feel like I thought to myself, I even spoke to my spirit guides this morning. It says, please guide me in the direction you want me to talk about with Karina so that we can give some hope and some enlightenment to anyone listening to the podcast. Like, I want you to direct me in how to articulate what I'm trying to say and for
Mhm.
people to understand what I'm feeling. And if I could give anything back out there is this stuff is real. Like unless you've experienced it yourself, you have to go through it yourself. Find a real true medium. I'm sure you'll be directed. Like it'll just come to you just like you came into my life. I know that was meant to be. And it just to find the validation that there's so much more out there. I just wanted to give a description. You know how I was saying like I learned Portuguese so easily out of nowhere? Well,
Yes.
in 2005, Augusto and I had seen a medium, and she said to me, she said, "Do you speak another language?" And I'm like, "No, not really. I mean, I kind of speak Italian, but I'm not very good at it. It's always been kind of difficult for me. I even went to school for it, and still it's hard." And she's like, "Well, the career that you get into is going to involve you knowing another language." And I was like, okay, whatever. Like, I actually wasn't sure. I was thinking of going to animal sciences, but then when Augusto and I moved back to Canada, I was really drawn into travel and tourism. So at this time, I was enrolled in SAIT, and I was thinking of working for a travel agency or an airline or something. And she says, yeah. So the career, and I've worked for 3 airlines. I've worked for many travel agencies, but she's like the one that's going to stick is based on you knowing another language. That's how you're going to enter this field. And I says, well, that's like I'm thinking I don't even speak that well. Like in 2005, it was not in my head. Like okay, whatever. I took that information. Well, in 2012, I received a phone call from Air Canada, and they noticed that I do speak another language. So at this time, I finally learned Portuguese, and they had somebody call to do an exam. And the only way I could get the position is if I could prove that I spoke a second language.
Oh my
And
God.
so, yeah, like at first it was in Italian. And of course, my husband speaks fluent in Portuguese, Italian, Spanish, English, all these languages. I'm like, oh, can't you do the test for me? Like, I'm so nervous. And so the woman was speaking to me Italian, and she's like, okay, that was good. I'm like, please let somebody call me that speaks Portuguese. Like, I know I can do it. And she's like, okay. So the next day, someone called me who speaks Portuguese, and I was already nervous because if it was somebody from Portugal, their Portuguese from Portugal is so different, and it's really difficult for me to understand. I'm like, please let them be from Brazil. And of course, like, thank goodness they called and they were from Brazil, and
Of
it
course.
just we winged it off. Like, it was perfect. Like, they could tell that I can understand them, that I can communicate, and we just had a great conversation. And that's how I got the job with Air Canada, was because I spoke Portuguese. And like I said, it was flawless. Like, I never took any classes, and I just learned it from living in Brazil for a while and just listening to my in-laws talk to my husband
Isn't that
over the
funny how this
phone.
all works?
Yeah,
Like, this is where
yeah,
I'm
it's
saying you can't
incredible.
make this stuff up. Like, it's all divinely timed, and
Yeah,
that's how life
absolutely.
is.
So talk to whoever and start seeing the synchronicities and those angel numbers that I learned from Karina, the 444 and the 777. Like, as
Yes.
soon as I listened to that podcast, I was like, wow,
Numbers are
I see them
everywhere.
everywhere. Yeah, it's
Again,
just
you can't
incredible.
make this stuff up. This is
Yeah,
why I love sharing these stories on the podcast, because I think it's
yeah,
just incredible to be able to give other people hope that when we do pay attention to those synchronicities and we stay in that flow of gratitude and all of that, it
yes.
really does start to flow and things shift, and that's when the magic happens. So,
There's so much more out there than we know. I just finished a book yesterday called Monica the Medium, Messages from Above. And I wasn't aware of this, but she had a television show.
she
And
did.
you
I
told me that,
watched it.
yeah,
Yeah.
you watched it. I didn't even
Long
know.
time
So
ago. Yeah.
that's so funny. So I just finished reading her book yesterday, and I wanted to share a little bit of what, like, the last page basically of the book. I know people think, oh, don't tell me what happens at the end, but this is so fitting. I think it would be so amazing if I could just read this out to anyone listening out there. Like I said, this is from a book, Monica the Medium, page 308. It says, I feel it's only fitting for spirit to have the last word. And this spirit channeled this to Monica. It says, when you take a breath and all that seems to flow into your chest is the pain you've been holding on to, the guilt you can't seem to let go of, or the anger that's been building up, I want you to close your eyes and let yourself feel your feelings for what they truly are. Cry, yell, scream, laugh, whatever you need to do. By allowing yourself to fully feel and even welcome the emotions, you can start to work through them. This process is your path to healing and will move you toward wholeness and peace. Your soul has known sorrow, but it has also known love. One day, you'll be able to transition any harsh thoughts and feelings into something entirely different. You can start to rebuild and replenish your energy. With time, you will discover your new normal and learn to live again. You have the power to take on a new perspective, a new attitude, a new beginning. When the voice of regret is all you can hear, let the voice of love speak louder. Oh, I became emotional at this point. If you find yourself consumed with guilt, remember that all has been forgiven. When the pain of missing me hits you with unexpected sharpness, hold fast to the dear memories that we shared together. When the burden of grief becomes too heavy for you to carry silently, talk about me, share my stories, and remember the parts of me that live on through you. Honor me with your ability to find even the smallest sliver of joy during times of sadness. Honor me with your happiness. Honor me by loving life and loving hard. Remember that love transcends death. You can't see me, but if you allow it, you can feel my presence. Listen for my whispers of courage when you need it most. Smile when you see the signs that make you know that I am near. Even when your heart feels broken, it still has so much to give. Have faith in the resilience of the human spirit. Find reasons to replace your tears with laughter. You can rise above pain and grief with hope and strength. After all, you are not doing this alone. I am with you every step of the way.
That's beautiful. I
It is
can't wait to
beautiful.
read that book, so I'm going to be getting it. Again, I followed her for many years, and I do think it's really important to share that, yeah, there is something
Yeah.
incredible out there that exists, and that's why we have this podcast. That's why I post about spirit on my social media almost daily because I wish everybody could just know, and I'm so grateful that you came on here to at least help me to relay that message to everyone else, to not only help others understand that they do exist, but also to understand in synchronicities, divine timing, soulmates, all of it.
And I just like again want to take the opportunity to say thank you so much for having me on the podcast. It allowed me to share my story with my husband. We don't have kids, so now this will be put out there in the universe forever, and that's such a blessing in itself. I think our story is incredible. I'm truly blessed that we found each other in this lifetime. The era of technology is what really brought us together. If it wasn't for the internet, we wouldn't have met in this lifetime. So yeah, yeah, it is pretty cool, and I truly hope that everyone finds their spiritual awakening because it's such a relief. It feels so good, and I truly feel blessed that I found it. And I want to thank you for continuing to guide me through it as well.
Aw, well, I'm so glad that you came on. Thank you so much, Lisa, for being a part of this podcast today.
And the pleasure is all mine.
Well, I want to thank you all so much for joining us today on the Divine Messages podcast. If you would like to book a reading with me, I can be reached at www.divinemessages.ca or on Instagram at divinemessages333 or at the Divine Messages podcast. Please bear in mind that the perspectives and opinions represented in this podcast are based solely on the Divine Messages interpretations. We can in no way be held responsible for the actions of our followers.